Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining. My name is Rajesh, and over the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to be walking through in this webinar finding your right fit, how to build a college list that actually works for your child and student. Again, my name is Rajesh. I'm part of Jupiter Education Services. Without much ado, let me get right into the agenda for today. So, what are we going to cover today? Five ideas or themes that turn a college list from what we call as a popularity contest into an actual plan. Um, so, what are they? A framework for right fit. We'll start off with that, evaluating colleges beyond what the US News rankings or Wall Street Journal rankings talk about, and reputation that you might have heard about from family members or friends. So, we look at what that framework might look like. Then we will look at what academic rigor is and how colleges actually read your child or student's course rigor. Not all high schools are the same. Even within a state, the high schools, are very different in the kind of courses that they offer. So how do colleges actually read your student's course rigor and match with what their application looks like? Then we look at what the actual college itself in terms of their academic rigor. Not all colleges, the rigor has the same rigor, and even within, you might hear one student, for example, in University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, say that, "Hey, I'm having a great time. The courses are very easy, and I'm having a good time otherwise." And to somebody else who says, "Oh, it's very taxing. I have to spend a lot of time in order to keep up." So not all rigor is the same. So matching the learning style and ambition of the individual student to the right kind of challenge is important. Then you have the class size and mentorship, what student to faculty ratio really predicts. So we look at some samples of how that might look like. You might be surprised that some of the big name colleges, what kind of class sizes they have for few of the popular programs or courses. Finally, we look at experiential learning and why that's important. Co-ops, vocational pathways, internships offer a competitive edge that is required in the current day and age, especially with AI being mainstream, and a lot of focus is on how to get the experience before actually entering the corporate America, so to speak. So let's jump into the first one. Right fit. What is right fit? Right fit isn't really just a feeling. It's not what you experience when you walk into a college on a when your child, they are evaluating your children are evaluating the college, right? It's a framework. And what does that mean? It has four facets to it. One, the academic fit, the rigor, pace, and teaching, whether the style matches with how your student or your child learns. Then you look at the social fit, the size, the culture, the community that the student will engage in, right? What kind of communities or frats, as they call it, the student might be interested in assimilating into the college and the students in the college. So that becomes important. The social fit becomes important. Then you look at the career fit, the path from major to internship to the first job. How's that kind of structured into the actual college experience itself? And then finally, we look at financial fit, the cost and the aid picture, what the family can sustain and want to spend. I shouldn't say sustain alone, but want to spend for the next 4 years. They may have already a student already in the child already in the college, or somebody that's coming up in the next year or two. And then you're looking at a private college, which is upwards of 80, 90,000 right now and per year, and you want to spend in a year or two, nearly 180, $200,000 if you have two students in private college. So how does that look? So it's important to evaluate from from that perspective as well. Now, when you look at a student's rigor and does it match with where they're applying, right? So colleges have 5 to 6 different um, things that they look at. They look at the college essay that the student has written. It could be the Common App essay, as they call it, or the Coalition app. It could be the supplemental essays as well, the add-ons that many of the private colleges and some public universities as well add into their application. Then you're looking at the SAT and ACT scores. Now, this has become extremely important and more so important in courses which are STEM focused, right? There was a time between when the pandemic struck, which was in 2020 up until 25 and even 26, where either the test scores were not considered important or they were optional. So the student had an option to not submit if the scores didn't really match with the actual college's expectation or what they had published in the open. Now that's about to change, or that's already changed. There's a lot of backlash that's happened where with the graduating class is not as competitive, and there's been a lot of talk about or press about scores being important, the SAT score, SAT or ACT scores being important. So I would argue that it's much higher than 46% if it is for colleges like where STEM is of importance, or STEM is the major that your student is applying to. Then you have the strength of the curriculum, which carries about 64%. What we mean by that is the actual curriculum itself, whether it's the high school curriculum in terms of different schools to have different kind of academic rigor, even the public schools within America, or if you think about IB, even that has a different kind of a strength, or the ASA levels as some of the international countries offer. So those are the kinds of things that looked upon from a strength perspective. Then you have the overall high school grades, the GPA, weighted, unweighted GPA that carries quite a bit of weightage. And finally, if the student has enrolled themselves in advanced placement or AP courses, what kind of grades have they obtained? So these are some of those parameters by which colleges rate or review the student's application and decide to give an acceptance or not. Now, rigor is read in the context and not isolation. What that means is they compare the students' credentials or transcript to what that high school offers. And so, because they understand that a high school in a rural, and Oklahoma, for example, may not have the same rigor as what a high school offers in, say, California, in Fremont, right? So it's in that context that the admissions officers compare the student's transcript. So the question that you need to ask, or the student needs to ask their own high school counselor, is um, the student's school profile, where does that show them at the top of the rigor? Their own school profile, how does that feature in terms of rigor that the school offers? So if the student has enrolled themselves in the most advanced uh, curriculum or courses that the high school offers, then that's great. But if they're not, then and the school itself is not considered as amongst the top in terms of what the academic rigor that it offers, then that is something that weighs into the college application as well. So it's important to understand what the student's rigor is as it compares with what the high school offers as far as advanced courses are concerned. Next, from a college itself, not all rigorous colleges are the same. As I was mentioning, there could be a situation where a student could enroll themselves in University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign and find that it's way too easy for them, or Carnegie Mellon, and the student is very proficient, that they might find that it's not as such a challenge as opposed to another student who might find it extremely difficult to cope. So structured core, some of the colleges offer what is called as a structured core. a defined sequence or a cohort that the student goes through where there's a shared text, shared milestone, and it rewards students who like clear expectations and can compare themselves with the peers that also enroll in that core curriculums. For example, Columbia is one where it offers so a core curriculum where there's a cohort, student cohort that goes through the exact same set of courses during their initial years in college. Then on the other extreme, you have an open curriculum. Brown, right from year one, allows you or a student to take whatever courses, none of which is mandatory. So there's very few or no required courses at all in case of Brown, and students design their own path from the initial time, and they have to be very self-directed in those instances. They know what they need, they're going to be exploring, and obviously, as the school offers and the seniors offer guidance, but it's a completely open curriculum. Then you have a very intensive seminar kind of a setup, like with University of Chicago, Claremont McKenna, and such, where there's a small discussion-driven classes. There's a lot of heavy reading and a lot of workload. It rewards students who thrive on close faculty contact, and in many instances, the students and the teachers know the students by name right in the first year itself, and there's a lot of interaction that happens, during the college, the actual class itself. So student to faculty ratio also matters more than just the number. Typically when you look at the college's website, you will see ratios that are mentioned as to what the student to faculty ratio is. So 5:1, for example, doesn't mean there's a class with just five students that are enrolled. It just means that there's more faculty time to divide across the different slots like office hours, research, advice, and not all ratios are really the same. So before you look at what that number looks like, you should think about what share of courses are taught by full-time faculty versus teaching assistants, adjuncts, or grad students, because many of the large colleges, including the likes of University of California, Berkeley, Georgia Tech, there are initial, basic courses that are actually taught by the teaching assistants or adjuncts, and not the actual faculty itself, right? So that's very important to understand. Contrast that with some of the colleges that I mentioned in the previous slide, University of Chicago, Claremont McKenna, where Claremont McKenna example is actually liberal arts college. So there is a very intimate atmosphere. The actual professors teach the students from the initial freshman year itself, right? So that's something to consider, and that might be important for you and for your student. So you need to understand how that works. So what does the average class size look like? So it's not just the ratio as you just understood. The average class size in some of the STEM curriculums, for example, if you look at the right-hand side of the slide, um, for example, Georgia Tech or University of California, Berkeley that I mentioned earlier, some of the STEM lectures has about 200 students. The class overflows is actually monitored outside the class, as I'm told, and where the student has to, some of the choices of courses and the professors are attended to by hundreds of students, right? Versus 15 to 30 in a liberal arts setting or a capped writing seminar. So that becomes extremely important. So how many undergraduates are actually in funded research positions, right? So many of the colleges are called research institutions. So typically, they may call themselves research institutions, but the research might be limited to post graduation, or graduate students are not to undergrad. So it's important to understand what kind of undergrad students actually go through and get into these funded research positions. So now, a 300-person lecture hall, we're exaggerating, obviously, but let's say it's 100, right? That's not an exaggeration. And the class does overflow, like I mentioned, in few of those large name or big name colleges in the choicest of subjects. So the class size and mentorship might shape how the undergraduate experience feels. If the student is overwhelmed with the fact that they are having to compete or to sit in a class, that may not be very healthy, right? It again it differs for the student by student, but if a student does not like that kind of intimate setting, then that might be a consideration. Or if a student is actually intimidated by a small class where the faculty member knows the student by name, that might be true as well. So it's not always a bad thing necessarily to have a 300-person or a 100-person lecture hall in that instance, right? So a large lecture environment is very common at big research universities that I mentioned, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, or University of California, Berkeley, or Georgia Tech. The intro courses run for 100 to 200 students. The teaching assistants actually lead those discussions. There's self-directed office hours where the student, if they really want to go and talk to the professor, they'll have to be self-directed themselves and use that opportunity. But then there are deep resources available once a student seeks them out. So it's really the onus of the student to tap into those in a large lecture environment. Compare that with a liberal arts college, LACs, liberal arts colleges or colleges, or even the honors colleges within, say, Georgia Tech or University of North Carolina, where there's a smaller cohort of students who are part of the honors program, University of Wisconsin-Madison. Or many of the public colleges offer the honors program, which is coveted and which might actually require a different or an additional essay or two to write or a higher GPA and such. But so those courses are often capped at 15 to 30 students. It's a faculty-led discussion and not teaching assistants that actually drive those courses. Professors do know the students by name quite early on, and mentorship happens in every setting, right? Without the students really needing to seek that out. So these are some things that are not, these are nuanced, not something that from an outside perspective, for a family or a student that's about to enroll themselves in a college or start applying would necessarily know. So that's where a counselor comes in and plays an important part in figuring out what that college should be or should look like. Experiential learning is really the new competitive edge in the world of AI and in the world of that we are living in. Co-ops and internships make the outcomes measurable, and a recent study showed that nearly 63% of students who had from a 24-25 cohort actually ended up having a full-time offer from the places that they actually interned in. It was the highest in about 5 years, and nearly 88% or more acceptance rate among the interns who were offered a full-time role. So there's familiarity on both sides, right? So that really ends up being so experiential learning becomes extremely important beyond just the classroom learning. So the takeaway for families, parents is that you got to think about internship right from the get-go. So that's a strongest indicator for a smooth transition from a college setting to career. And like I said, many students look forward to that opportunity, and that's something that you may really want to look at as far as what kind of uh, avenues that are available and what percent of students do end up getting internship. It need not be paid. It can just be the experience itself that might count for what the student how they might transition smoothly from a campus to career, right? So when you're building that list, um, don't just look at what the student can study there, but also what my student would have accomplished as far as projects. If you're in the sciences and in technology, for example, what kind of projects they could showcase on Git and show as an additional line item in their resume, right? That becomes important. Or what kind of projects that they've delivered that they can actually go back and showcase in their resume. That becomes very important. So colleges where experiential learning is sort of built in and not just added or bolted on. So some examples, Drexel, where 94% of students actually complete a paid co-op program of with the 6 month duration. Northeastern, very well known in the Boston area. And because Boston is such a big hub for technology, biomedical, um, engineering, life sciences, this is a gamut of companies that are out there in the Boston region. So Northeastern Co-op is ranked number one per US News, and 95% of the students are employed or enter grad school within the 9 months of graduation. University of Cincinnati is where the co-op model really originally started. Georgia Tech is very popular because nearly 50% of the co-op students get an offer from the employer that they interned with. So, and the overall recent grad employment was above 90%. So putting it all together, your fit checklist before a college goes into the list that you're creating. Like I said, an ideal list should be about 12 to 15, although some students do apply to 20, 25. But really, it depends on the kind of time availability that the student has. Perhaps the student is in a gap year, because of which they're able to pack in more colleges. Nonetheless, is my student's course rigor in the range that this college typically admits? That's the first question you need to ask. Then there's the academic structure. We talked about how we could have an open curriculum, a core curriculum, a seminar. How does that match with what the student actually likes to learn? Will the student get access to these faculty members? Are the curriculums taught by teaching assistants or the faculty members themselves? What is the size of those classes? And how does that matter to the student? That's something that definitely needs to be considered as well. And finally, we just talked about the path from major to internship to the first job, which is also very important in the current day and age, given the cost of college. So with that, we come to the end of our webinar today. For those who want to hang around for the Q&A, we are happy to answer the questions. But really, the rigor, teaching style, mentorship, needs to be kind of evaluated together, and they tell you much more than what a ranking of a college that US News or Wall Street Journal or Princeton Review really puts out there. So if this is something that interests you and you want to understand and tap into our combined expertise of more than 40 years between all of us here at Jupiter Education, then please reach out to us in any of these avenues. You can email us, you can go on our website and ask for a free strategy session. We'll be happy to accommodate, or you could just call and message us and understand more. With that said, I'll turn over to Q&A. Thank you for joining today, and from wherever you are, have a good rest of the day, afternoon, or good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.